Is the fighting in Verbove becoming even more chaotic? And is Russia preparing to bail? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's September 30th, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. Okay, first taking a look at the control map, we do finally have some updates, the most notable of which is west of Verbove. And just look at this. This is pretty strange. You can see that Ukrainian and Russian forces are almost trading almost an even amount of territory. You can see Russia operating this salient here. It looks like primarily this a bar squad, but they look to have pushed south and actually withdrawn from positions to the north. And it's tough to say why Russia would do this, if this is even their call, right? It could also be Ukrainian forces trying to bait them somehow, trying to flank them, or get them to shift their positions. But it seems like this is more likely a part of a Russian effort here, probably to put additional pressure on Ukrainian flanks that are operating in and around Verbove. That's my theory here, is that as Ukrainian forces, push into Verbove, this flank along here, along the northern part of their axis of advance, is vulnerable, and that Russia ordered its units here to push into it, even if it meant ceding territory to the north, and that would hopefully, their hope was, disrupt Ukrainian efforts to really dig into Verbove positions. So that is my thesis on what drove this pretty strange looking change to the battlefield. That's really the only change that we've got in the control map. Looking at the combat map, you can see Russian forces stepping up their combat engagements, nearly doubling from the average the past week. 44 separate engagements, including notably 2 reported right here in and around the Verbove region. You can also see this map is lists a much larger salient as being contested, and much smaller territories by both sides, right? So, and it would make sense that these are just listed as generally contested regions all around. But the fact that Russia is now pushing hard in both Novoprokopivka and in Verbove is likely indicative of they're trying to disrupt Ukrainian offensive operations. I suspect that both sides probably realize that weather is going to slow the pace of offensive operations in the coming weeks, at least temporarily, and that Russia is trying to disrupt Ukrainian operations while Ukrainian forces are trying to continue to push and secure any gains they can at the last minute. Guys, if you've not been living under a rock, you know that I have been working for the last year on a project that has finally launched. This is Strike Gum. Strike Gum is a energy drink alternative where I've taken an entire energy drink's worth of caffeine as well as alpha GPC, a powerful nootropic, and put them into a single piece of gum. I worked with a manufacturer out in Denver, so it's made in the USA, right? And if you are like me, you just got tired of energy drinks where it's 200 calories of basically all sugar. You got a huge sugar crash. You felt bloated. Strike Gum is different, right? It's got the same caffeine as an entire energy drink in each piece, and 0 sugar, just like 5 calories or 10 calories in each individual piece. So if you're looking for a better energy drink alternative, go to strikegum.com and check it out. Of course, especially if you're someone who, like me, was dropping like $4 on an energy drink, the cost per piece is just so much lower, especially if you get the tray that's 75 pieces of gum, it costing you just like 68 cents a piece. So a great deal if you're someone looking for a lower calorie alternative to sugary energy drinks. Best of all, 50% of the proceeds from this first production run of Strike Gum, I'm donating to charities that support civilians who've been injured or displaced in the conflict. So if you want to support Ukraine, support me and get a great energy drink alternative, check out strikegum.com. Now, moving over to X, I wanted to look at the rumor mill, and bear in mind that's what X is really here. It's the rumor mill, but there's some reports here that Russian forces are considering withdrawing entirely from Verbove, that they are rumored to be having a lot of problems with their artillery, insufficient artillery forces to suppress Ukrainian advances, and that as a result, they may be considering withdrawing from the town. As you can see, this is a leaked WhatsApp message, or excuse me, a leaked, I think, Telegram message. It says, again, the enemy entered Verbove. It says, now we are trying to smoke them, but there is not enough it's artillery. We'll probably leave. To hell with this Verbove. There will be nothing for us anyway, which is accurate, right? Every one of these towns that become a site of heavy fighting tends to be destroyed completely in the process. But again, as we've talked about elsewhere on the channel, when you look at the actual sort of vacon line, you realize that occupying Verbove is going to allow Ukraine to really get behind one entire segment of the sort of vacon line here, create a real liability for these forces along the rest of the front line. It's also going to allow all these forces defending Novoprokopivka to also have serious problems on their flanks. I think it has the potential to really unlock a lot of the most robust areas of this sort of vacon line, and really potentially swing the momentum in Ukraine's favor if they can take Verbove. And even if this individual says, "Oh, there's not much hope. It's hard to hold Verbove. It's not worth it." I suspect that the higher officers will understand that even if Verbove is a smoking mess, it's still Russia's perception will be that it can't fall into Ukrainian hands. Anyway, that's really all I had. The only other note from the news is that Russia started its conscription cycle, right? Beginning on October 1st. Pulling in this year, they're expecting about 130,000 personnel. And while Russia is not taking conscripts into Ukraine, all of those 130 personnel will almost certainly have extremely coercive efforts will be made to get them to sign contracts to serve in Ukraine once they finish their mandatory conscription. So, you know, you can imagine the Russian state will probably just squeeze the hell out of those conscripts at the end of their service to get them to sign on to fight in Ukraine. But what's even more interesting is that the conscripts are going to be drawn from, quote, all constituent entities of the Russian Federation, which technically, according to Russia, includes Ukrainian territory, Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson. Right? So it seems like a bunch of Ukrainians may find themselves conscripted into the Russian military. Now, between you and me, I sort of suspect that many of these folks will either just tell Russia to go F off if they're loyal Ukrainians stuck behind enemy lines, or if they are pro-Russian, they may jump at the chance to sign on as conscripts. But bear in mind, guys, these independent republics have also had a mandatory draft for a long time, with very high casualty rates among their units. So there may not be a lot of able-bodied men for them to draw on at this point. But still, a interesting note and a preview of a potential surge in Russian personnel coming to the front lines. Anyway, that is all I had for you guys. Thank you so much to everybody, especially to our Colonel tier members of CombatVetNews.com. Thanks to our Lieutenant tier members and all the members of Combat Vet News. I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.